Wednesday, June the 15th, you should be reading Proverbs chapter 22 and 23. You should also be reading Psalm 117 as well as 1 Thessalonians chapter 1. I've said this before, but I truly mean it. I really hope that as you've taken this journey through the book of Proverbs, which is so different than going through a narrative book like Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, all these other things, I really hope that these little nuggets of wisdom start to ingrain in your life, and that you see yourself becoming a more wise person as you surrender your whole body and your whole mind and your whole everything to the ways of God. Remember, there's only two ways that is talked about in Proverbs. The ways of God and following after him, or the ways of a fool. The ways of God, learning to be wise in what we do with our time and our resources and our everything. Or the ways of a fool and going off the rails. In Proverbs chapter 22 and 23, I want to point out two verses to you that talk about children and what we should do with children. And I think it's wonderful things, and I just want to share a couple thoughts with you before you're sent today. Chapter 22 says this in verse 6, "Start children off on the way they should go, and even when they are old, they will not turn from it." I know this happens in my life. Maybe this happens in your life too. The rules and the expectations that parents and grandparents have set for me have kind of become the basis of rules and expectations of my life as an adult as well. I've clung to most of those things. Following after the heart of God is something that started with me as a child because of my parents and the grandparents. Starting children off in the way they should go, even when they're old, they won't turn from it. I know as well as you do, I can't force my kids to do anything. But I can guide them towards the right paths and trying to help start the trajectory of their life towards Jesus and the right path. Second verse I want to talk about with you. It's in chapter 23 and it's verse 13. It says, "Do not withhold discipline from your child. If you punish them with the rod, they will not die. Punish them with the rod and save them from death." Here's why I wanted to talk about these things. You and I are ever increasingly living in a culture where parents and guardians and grandparents are taking a step back from parenting their children and just letting anyone else do it. I've seen this happen where parents don't want to do something, so the neighbors take care of it, or older siblings take care of raising the children, or they say, "Nah, the school's got that," or even the church has that. Parents and grandparents that are listening, it is not the church, it is not your schools or community's job to raise your kids. It is actually a job that God has given you. You are the primary discipler of your child and raising them in the ways of the Lord, and it is your job. I want to encourage you to hold on to it with everything you are and use it for the glory of God. And you may be thinking, "Man, I don't want to punish my child. I want to be my child's friend. I want to do this." I want to encourage you that your job is not to be an authoritarian person who comes in and is barking orders every time. Your job is to lovingly guide your children towards the right future, right? Let me give you an example of it. When you're driving on a road and you're about to go around some cliffs, the safest thing to do is to drive on a road going around some cliffs that had guardrails on the side of it. Now, the guardrails are not there for the driver to bounce back and forth between the rails and go off wherever. The guardrails are there to help you stay on the road in case you're not being wise in your driving, or in case something happens. The hope and expectation of guardrails is that they'll never be used, right? But when they are used, it's to help you be saved from an even greater calamity. When guardrails are in place and used properly, people don't run into them. But if I were going around a corner or something and I took it too sharp and I hit a guardrail, it saves me and those with me from going off the cliff and having even more hurt or damage or even losing my life. Roads without guardrails that have tight turns and stuff, people die on those things and they go off the rails. We wish that there are guardrails. It's the same thing with raising your kids and pointing them. The rod and stuff that they're talking about in Proverbs, they're not talking about beating your child every day. They're talking about guardrails. guiding your children on this right paths towards where they need to go, so that way your children aren't bucking the system all the time, but hopefully as they learn the guardrails, they get to walk towards the safety, you get to walk towards the future, you get to walk towards the peace and grace of God because you have helped guide them in the right directions of following your King. Parents and grandparents, I hope you take hold of your God-given right and your God-given ability to be the one who stands for your children and grandchildren and helps them on the right paths of life. If you've not been doing this, it's never too late to start. Start pointing your kids and your family in the ways of Jesus. If you need help, reach out to us. No one on staff is perfect at this. We're all learning how to do this together all the time and become better parents of following after Jesus as our family on mission. But reach out to us and we'd love to do what we can to help you. Until we see you again, you are sent.